that's a good question. I mean, I think that being out in nature is incredibly valuable for your mental well-being and your physical well-being. So being outside, we know, improves everybody's mood. It makes you healthier. And you have to learn about your state and where you live. Arkansas is really biodiverse, and we have a lot of interesting things to see in Arkansas. And the Big Woods is a part of the state which I don't think has gotten a lot of press over the years, but it's a missed opportunity if you don't go see it.
Hello, I'm Derek Cash with the North Little Rock Public Library System and want to welcome you to Meet the Author. Joining us today is Distinguished Professor of Biology, Field Ecologist, and author, Dr. Matthew Moran, to discuss his book, Exploring the Big Woods, A Guide to the Last Great Forests of the Arkansas Delta. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's a great honor. I mean, I just want to start off by saying you do a really good job about telling us what you can see in the Great Woods. The book is beautifully photographed. It's well written. It's well structured. I just had to start off by telling the audience what to expect should they pick this book up and read it, because I was just really impressed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I tried to make the book educational so that you would learn a lot about the Big Woods of Arkansas, but also to give you an opportunity to actually explore it and have fun at the same time. So it's kind of that combination of having a great time while you're out there in the forest, but also learning about this fairly unique ecosystem that exists in Arkansas. And then thanks for the saying about the photo. Most of the photographs are mine.
Good.
Some of them are other people that donated photographs, but probably 80% of those are ones I took. And I do a little bit of photography. I don't really consider myself that good at it, but I appreciate you saying that you like the photos.
Well, I like it. I realize that photography in a book is expensive, but you've got many color photographs, which add more to the value of the book and the reading experience. So thank you for going to having your publisher go to that much expense, because I was impressed by it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think for a field guide, showing readers what they're going to see visually is super important. So they get excited about doing it, but also have an idea of what they're going to see when they get there.
Mm-hmm. I also liked that at the beginning, I want to say the chapter, maybe chapter is not correct, but section, you show things like distance, the time it will take, and the difficulty, which assists the reader to know, I've got, how long it's going to take if I walk or whatever, how much time. And I thought that was a good tool to make the book useful for the reader.
Yeah, I mean, we have some parts of the Big Woods are really dense, and some of the longer trails I discussed would be for those who have a lot of accessibility, no accessibility issues, and can go anywhere they want. But I want to make it available to anyone in our society who wants to visit. And there are some trails that are paved and are really, really easy, and others that are long distance canoe trails, which require a lot more vigorous work. But so I want to make sure everyone knew what they're getting into before they get there. It is a very flat part of the state, so there's no hills to climb, unlike the mountainous areas. So none of the trails are going to be difficult in terms of mountainous terrain, but they do get muddy, and it's a swamp. Most of it is, so it can be some difficult terrain at times.
And I'll just throw this in as well. As you state, some of the property is private, or if I am remembering correctly, and you have to be careful. Am I remembering correctly?
Well, all of the official trails, both canoe trails and hiking trails I describe, are all on public lands.
Okay.
There are private inholdings all around the area, so you just want to watch where you go and stay on the trails. Of course, waterways are public by law,
yes,
so you can go anywhere you want on those.
Okay.
But you do want to watch for no trespassing signs, because there are inholdings, and even in some of the wildlife refuges that are private land, so they're posted, so you'll know it if you're near one.
Okay. One thing I noticed about the book is that, and I'm like 99.99% sure I know the answer to this, but you write as if you covered every mile of every river in the Big Woods. I mean, and I mean that as a compliment, because you could trust Dr. Moran was thorough. He knows what he's talking about, as opposed to like taking I don't know, an abridged version of, well, if you go down 6 miles, you trekked the entire thing. And I was just impressed with that much intensity that you took to this project.
Yeah, well, I certainly did not traverse every river in the system because
Okay.
it is
Then I was
thousands of
wrong.
miles of
Okay.
streams. But I will say that anything that's described as a place you can go, I went for sure.
Okay.
And we used GPS technology to track our routes. All that was recorded the whole time, so we it should be accurate when you're
Okay.
when you're walking as to where you are. And same with the roads. I GPSed when I was driving, so I knew how far I went and exactly how to get there and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, anything described in the book, I've definitely been there. I never
Okay.
described anything I did not explore
Okay.
myself.
All right. Okay. Now, in your text, you talk about the protection and the preserving of species, and some have greatly been reduced. And you also talk about reintroducing species such as the elk and the bison. Would you talk about that a little bit? Have any of the species increased that you were worried about, or has anything gotten even worse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this part of the state, the eastern part of the state, which is often referred to as the Delta, which is excellent farmland, most of it has been cleared over the last century or more. So there's very little natural habitat left. So a lot of the animals that used to live there are gone or greatly reduced, like you mentioned. So bison are gone from the whole state of Arkansas. Elk have been reintroduced into the mountainous regions. Wolves are gone. Mountain lions might be coming back on their own. There have been sightings of them in the state in recent years. One species I'll talk about a little bit, which has recovered somewhat, is the black bear, which Arkansas used to be known as the bear state, which I think I mentioned that in the book. And then the bears were almost exterminated from Arkansas around 1920 or so. But a few of them survived in the big woods. And that population there is actually genetically different from many of the other bears in the country. It's linked to the Louisiana subspecies of black bear. So they were probably reduced to about 50 at one time. There's now about 500 of them that live in the big woods, which is a pretty big increase. Mm-hmm. It's one of the places you can actually find the densest population of bears in Arkansas. They're still hard to see because they're very secretive, but they're there. So that's one which I think is encouraging. You know, we have this species that was almost gone, is now recovered with protections, and to the point where it looks like a viable population again.
Okay. Something else that you mentioned, and I never knew this, you mentioned that mussels used to be, I don't know if the word was prevalent, but I never thought of mussels and the shells being here in Arkansas. I always think of like clams and oysters, things like that, being like in Maryland or Maine, that sort of thing. I never knew they were here.
Yeah, so most people don't know this, but North America has the highest diversity of freshwater mussels in the world. And the eastern United States is actually the hot spot for freshwater mussel diversity, which is not it's not a charismatic group of species like mammals are, so people don't know a lot about them, but they're really interesting. And often they're very sensitive to disturbance, but there are quite a few still survive in the Big Woods area. And at one time, there was a big industry to make buttons from the shells. So they were harvested by the mussel harvesters in the White River and places like that. And there's still a lot of species that survive. Some are gone, but a lot of them are still there.
Okay. All right. So if a person were to go into the Big Woods, it is not unlikely then that they would not see them. Is that, could I deduce that from what you just said?
Yeah, the water clarity is really low, so they're hard to see. But
okay.
you will see the shells on land because the river otters eat them.
Okay.
So that they catch the mussel, they pull it up on land and eat it, and they leave the shell behind. So you will find the shells on land quite a bit.
Okay. Something that I was also impressed with, you talk about the Black Swamp has dark tea-colored water. And I learned something, a biology lesson without you having to instruct me. And it's because of the decay of leaves produces tannic acid. Talk about that. I was impressed by that.
Yeah. Tannins are found in many plants. They use them for defense. So they're toxic to animals trying to eat the leaves. They're not super toxic, but they're toxic enough to reduce growth rates in a lot of insects. So yeah, when those leaves fall into the water, they decay and they release the tannic acid, which it gives that tea color look to it,
Mhm.
and it does lower the pH of the water quite a bit. But it also seems to inhibit bacterial growth. So although the water looks kind of dirty because it's dark, it's actually pretty clean. And if you had to drink it, I would not advise you to do this, of course. But if you had to, you probably would be okay.
Okay. When you say only because you stated it, if you were to drink the water, it wouldn't poison you, I take it. It just wouldn't be.
Well, you should never drink water out of a stream in the wild without purifying it
Okay.
first.
Well, okay.
But tannic acid does tend to reduce bacterial growth a lot, so
Okay.
it might be cleaner than you would expect.
Okay. And it just goes against what you think. You think of a glass of clean water you get out of the faucet. You think that's clean and this would have to be dirty. So I just had to bring that up when I read it because it just bowled me over when I read that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. These cypress swamps, cypress tupelo swamps, do create this somewhat unique type of environment where it's really low acidity, really high acidity or low pH, and that affects what can live there.
Uh-huh. Now, something else that just these snippets of things I'm bringing up is just things. The book as a whole I liked as a whole, but there were these snippets of things that just struck me. I just wanted to discuss. Something else is the bald cypress. Is it still in the Big Cypress Tree Trail, or because you say it's the largest one that you think is in the state? I mean, I'm just terrified to find out. No, it died, or someone secretly chopped it down, or something.
Well, if someone chopped it down, they'd be in some pretty big trouble. No, it's alive and well. It is the largest cypress in Arkansas. It's probably not the oldest. It seems to be growing really fast. So
Okay.
it's very healthy looking tree, actually. It is gigantic. I can't remember the actual circumference. I think it's 45 feet, maybe. I think
Oh my goodness.
that's circumference. That's not diameter. I have to go back and read it. I can't go back and look again. But
But still,
it's very.
45 feet is pretty big. Yeah.
I may be exaggerating a little bit, but
Well,
anyway, it's really impressive when you see it.
uh-huh.
Yeah, it's doing well. That individual tree looks healthy. And the cypress the cypress were harvested, most of them, for lumber many years ago. So in a lot of the big woods, you have smaller ones growing back, and they're actually doing fine. They're growing. They grow pretty quickly when they're young, and a lot of places that they've recovered on their own without much assistance and growing to like medium size now. That individual tree was interesting. That area was cut for timber. You can see stumps of cypress that were cut 100 years ago all around it, and for some reason that one tree was left. I think it's hollow inside, so I have a feeling that the lumbermen considered it not very valuable and left it there.
Oh, okay. All right. Something you just stated that kind of rang a little bell in my head. We have discussed from your book that some of the animals have, come to almost near extinction, and they've tried to reintroduce. What about the plants? Are there any noticeable plants that have disappeared, or that I don't recall reading anything like that in the book? Not that it's not there.
Yeah, there's not a lot of endangered plants in that region of the state. That habitat, these lowland forests that exist all up and down the Mississippi Delta region, were once covering millions of acres. They cover less now, but there's not a lot of plants in that region that are endangered or have disappeared. It's not a place that has a lot of super rarities in terms of plants.
Okay.
So no, I think what we've lost is the ecosystem, which is this complex group of species that used to exist together in a very large area. Now it's much smaller. And even the old growth trees, most were cut. So what you have now is secondary growth that's coming back. And it doesn't look like it did 200 years ago. The trees are much smaller in general. So the system is different. And over time, it should recover back to what it was, and it will look like a mature forest eventually. So I always think that what we're in danger of losing is not individual species, but an entire system that was unique to the lower Mississippi Valley.
How many years do you, at the present rate, let's say nothing were to change, at how many years do you think it would take? Or are we talking like centuries or decades, whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is centuries. I mean, after probably about 200 years, you couldn't tell the forest was ever harvested. It would grow back to what it
uh,
looked like before.
uh,
But I will say this: the cypress, especially, can live for over 1,000 years. So
wow.
yeah, so it's like I think it's the fourth or fifth longest lived tree in the United States after some of the ones out west. Um, so it's the longest lived tree in Arkansas for sure, species. So they don't really reach their maximum size until almost a millennium.
Well,
The
wow.
other the other trees like the oaks live for a maximum 300 to 400 years. After about 200 years, they're pretty big though, and you sort of can't really tell they were ever harvested.
Okay, all right. Now, something I want to introduce or talk about is the water hyacinth. And talk,
Yes,
I mean, that kind of, I don't know, I want to think of like a dangerous plant, but
it is
I'll let you,
dangerous.
I'll let you comment on that.
It's a really expensive plant because yeah, so it's introduced in the Amazon, and it is a invasive weed across much of the world now. And in the big woods, it is invading from the south, and in some places, it's really really prevalent to a point where you can't canoe through some of the lakes anymore. It completely covers the surface, and it does exclude native plants, and also reduces the water temperature by blocking out the sun. Animals that rely upon open water, so a lot of fish, alligators don't like it. So it is a very invasive weed. Ironically, I still see it in people's ponds sometimes, like ornamental ponds in their yard, and they really, really should not use it because it will spread.
Mhm.
And it is a huge economic drain too. It costs the United States hundreds of millions of dollars every year to clear it from waterways for shipping. So
Okay.
it is a major pest.
Okay. Yeah. Can you tell us about your book, any challenges or difficulties that you had in writing this book? You know, the research and putting, your thoughts and everything to paper.
Yeah, I mean, the largest amount of work was the field work. Because it took me about 2 years to do the work necessary to write the book. Um, Time in the field to walk all the trails and establish the canoe trails and explore the area. It's not an area I was super familiar with, even though I've been in Arkansas for over 20 years. I had not spent a lot of time in that part of the state, which I think is true for a lot of people living in Arkansas. When they want to go outside and do something fun in the outdoors, they often don't go to the Delta, they go to the mountains, which I understand. Mountains are beautiful. But so I spent lots and lots of days and weekends out in the field, dealing with the weather. Did a lot of this in the wintertime, so the weather's really iffy. The summertime, it's so hot and humid, it's hard to work down there. The field work was probably the biggest challenge of getting out there, when I wasn't working with my regular job,
Mhm.
and to do all that work to be able to write the book in the first place. Once the field work was done, the writing came pretty easy.
Mhm.
I will say that working on GIS technology and making the maps for me was a big learning curve, so that took a lot of time. But the writing part, it flowed pretty well. I was kind of happy the way the writing came out. For me, when I write, the editing process after the drafts are done is laborious, just because going through every single word several times to make sure it's right is a for me a challenge, just because I've already read it like 10 times. I'm trying to go through it one last time. So the editing process for me is sort of laborious, but other than that, I thought the writing went flowed pretty well.
Mhm. Did you find that the seasons of the year made any difference in your research for this book? I mean, like, would you say, I mean, I'm assuming you went all year round, or did you only go in the summertime? Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I went year round.
Okay.
I actually don't go very much in the summer because it's so hot.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of it was spring, fall, and winter. But you want to go during different times to get the seasons for the migratory birds. So there's, as I mentioned in the book, all these ducks and other waterfowl come there in the winter and they leave in the summer. And then um, in the summertime, you have migratory birds that come from the tropics and they go back down to the tropics in the winter. So going during the different seasons gives you different birds because a lot of
Uh-huh.
them are migratory. And
Uh-huh.
then also you obviously you see amphibians in the springtime, they're really thick and dense. So you see a lot of them. In the wintertime, they're hibernating. Reptiles, same deal. So you want to go during different times of the year to see the changes in the seasons, how the plants change, and the plants flower obviously during the warm season, and the comings and goings of the different animals. So you definitely want to go during different times of year. I would avoid July if I were you. because it is, you know how Arkansas is in July,
Yes,
right?
hot and
Uh,
humid.
yeah,
Yes.
well, it's even more humid down there.
Okay.
Uh, but from September through May, uh, there's always something really cool to see.
Uh-huh. What could you what could you say to the people who are watching to encourage them to go out to explore and look at nature?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that being out in nature is incredibly valuable for your mental well-being and your physical well-being. So being outside, we know, improves everybody's mood. It makes you healthier, and you have to learn about your state and where you live. Arkansas is really biodiverse, and we have a lot of interesting things to see in Arkansas. And the Big Woods is a part of the state which I don't think has gotten a lot of press over the years, but it's a missed opportunity if you don't go see it.
Okay, all right. Do you have any works coming out very soon?
Any works?
Yeah, books, that sort of thing.
Oh, no, I'm as you know, I recently moved to Costa Rica where I work for the Children's Eternal Rainforest, which is a conservation group here that
Okay.
manages a large preserve, and I do research in the field on ecology. So I'm doing mostly scientific research. So I do write scientific papers. They're not maybe as exciting for the general public. They're very technical a lot of times, but that's mostly what I'm writing right now. So I don't have any current for the public type books in process right now. This was my first one I did, and it was you know, as you said, a lot of work, and it was really rewarding work to do.
Well, I got to admit that surprises me when you say your first work, because you write very professionally. It was entertaining. There was a lot of, I would say, not necessarily scientific, encyclopedic information, but it wasn't boring. I loved reading the book. So it takes a good mixture, and you did a great job. Spot on. So I think if you were to write a second one or have one come out in the near future, it would probably be just as good. I could rave. I just thought I enjoyed this book so much. Yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And my mom is a retired English teacher, so she went through it with a fine tooth comb to make sure I had no grammatical errors, but also make sure that it sounded good for the public. She's not a biologist, so I asked, is this enjoyable to you? And also make sure there's no grammatical errors. So that was a big help to have your mom read it over for you.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yes. Well, Dr. Moran, if people want to buy this book, or if they want to contact you about something, are you in social media, or where can they get your books?
Sure. Well, the book's available from the University of Arkansas Press, of course, who's the publisher. It's also available on Amazon. You can buy from either of those locations. And then I'm not a big social media person. I am on Facebook. I do post a lot of pictures from my adventures in Costa Rica on there. I used to post a lot from Arkansas as well. But also, if people have questions about the Big Woods, they're welcome to email me. I'm happy to get my email address out. It's still my old Hendrix College address, so it is moran@hendrix.edu. So if anyone has a question about the Big Woods, advice, I'm happy to answer a question anytime.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed talking with you. I enjoyed the book, as you could tell. So it's just been a great pleasure that you were willing to take the time from Costa Rica. Once again, thank you so much. And
you're very welcome.
All right.
I really, thanks for having me on the program. I really enjoyed talking with you today, and I hope that some people hear this and get the encouragement to go out and see the Big Woods.
Okay.
And to explore that area of the state.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. If you're interested in reading Exploring the Big Woods, you can check it out from the library or purchase it wherever books are sold. For more information, visit our website at nlrlibrary.org. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Have a great day, everyone.